Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current situation of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and then share with you regarding a disagreement between the United States and Israel regarding the best approach to handle the possibility of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons in the near future. First, we're going to be sharing with you an overview of what we're going to be covering in this week's report, and it consists of the following. The Palestinians repeated that they will not give up their efforts at the United Nations to get recognition of a Palestinian state based upon 1967 borders, East Jerusalem as its capital, even though they presently do not have the votes at the United Nations Security Council to get recognition of a Palestinian state and thus become a full-fledged member of the United Nations. The United Nations General Assembly passed 6 resolutions in the past week supporting the Palestinian view of the peace process. One of these UN General Assembly measures was to express support for the 1947 UN Partition Plan, which called for the creation of a Jewish state and an Arab state and making Jerusalem an international city. That plan was to be implemented on May the 14th, 1948, and at that time Israel did accept the 1947 UN Partition Plan, but the Arabs rejected it, and as a result there was a war that broke out between Israel and her Arab neighbors. The Catholic Church said that in any final status peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, that Jerusalem should have a special international status to protect the various holy sites in the city. And then, given that Mahmoud Abbas made a request on September the 23rd to the United Nations and the United Nations Security Council to be recognized as a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital, and then that proposal has yet to be accepted. The quartet responded by outlining a plan for Israel and the Palestinians to come to a peace agreement. That plan laid out a timetable for it to be accomplished by the end of 2012. And in that timetable, it called for the Palestinians and the Israelis to submit their own proposal and views regarding how they each see the borders of a Palestinian state and the security arrangements would be in any peace agreement. The Palestinians have now submitted their paper detailing their views on borders and security. Israel said that it will not present its view of borders and security regarding a peace agreement unless there is direct negotiations with the Palestinians wherein Israel wants to discuss all outstanding issues between them that would include borders and security. The United States and Israel are in an intense disagreement over the timing of a possible military strike against Iran's nuclear program. Israel believes that time is short and they only have a few months before it is too late. The United States, meanwhile, believes that they have as long as the fall of 2012 before it becomes urgent to attack Iran to prevent it from acquiring nuclear weapons. The Obama administration therefore chastised Israel for considering bombing Iran in the near future without it being first coordinated with the United States. So that's what we're going to be covering in this week's update. let's look at the news items which give the details regarding these things. The first is from the Jerusalem Post, dated December the 2nd, and the headline reads, "The Palestinians won't back down from United Nations statehood bid." The Palestinian Authority will not back down from their efforts to become a member of the United Nations, even though the Palestinians has acknowledged that they would not succeed were the UN Security Council to vote today. Senior Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat told Ma'an news agency. Erekat said the Palestinians would persist even if the request fails to pass in the UN Security Council, adding that the Palestinian leadership knew from the beginning of the process that the United States would use its veto over the matter. The Palestinian negotiator said that the Palestinian government would persist until our right to establish a Palestinian state on the pre-67 borders are realized. We won't backtrack, he declared. We went to the UN Security Council and we will go a second time or a third time. We will not give up. Then Mahmoud Abbas reiterates the Palestinians will continue with these efforts at the United Nations, saying that it should complement peace negotiations provided that Israel is prepared to negotiate on the basis of 67 borders. Mahmoud Abbas said that the Palestinians' decision to apply to join the United Nations is our legitimate right based upon the 1947 UN resolution to partition Palestine into two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state. Given that the Palestinian efforts to be recognized as a state based upon 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital is being roadblocked in the UN Security Council, the United Nations General Assembly passed 6 resolutions, and they are closely aligned with the Palestinians' view on the conflict with Israel. The article from Ma'an News says the United Nations General Assembly passed a series of resolutions it says will address core issues in the conflict between Israel and the Arab world. Delegates hope the votes will re-energize efforts to resolve old regional conflicts. The resolutions criticize Israel settlement building on the West Bank and in East Jerusalem and calls for them to return to negotiations and support United Nations organizations working on the issue. Other texts say that Israel's decisions to impose its laws, jurisdiction, and administration on Jerusalem and the Golan Heights was illegal. Canada, Israel, the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, and a couple other countries, as well as the United States, voted against each of these General Assembly resolutions. The next article is regarding the Catholic Church, saying that in any peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, that there needs to be international guarantees regarding the protection of various holy sites in the city. Peace negotiations in the Middle East must tackle the issue of the status of the holy sites. Cardinal John Louis Tehran, head of the Vatican's Council for Interreligious Dialogue, said Friday. The Vatican said the answer is to have the global community regulate the sites, and it favors handing the task to a large group of states rather than placing it in the hands of the UN Security Council or Europe. The sacred and unique character of the area must be safeguarded. It can only be done with a special, internationally guaranteed status, the Cardinal said. Next article is from Haaretz.com, and the headline reads, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu balks at Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas's proposal for Palestinian state borders. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas recently provided representatives of the Middle East Quartet, which consists of the United States, the European Union, Russia, and the United Nations, who have the job of overseeing the peace process. They gave the quartet a proposal on borders for a Palestinian state and security arrangements that would outline the Palestinian position in any peace agreement with Israel. The quartet demanded that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu provide a counterproposal. However, Israel has refused to do so, saying that any counterproposal should be presented in direct negotiations with the Palestinians. The Palestinian proposal was submitted in the context of a timeline suggested by the quartet on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly session in New York on September the 23rd, just a short time after Netanyahu delivered a speech to the UN General Assembly on that day. The quartet's timeline called for the Palestinians and Israelis to submit proposals on borders and security issues by January the 26th of 2012 to serve as opening positions for subsequent negotiations between them. About a week after it was issued, Israel welcomed the quartet's plan. Since then, envoys from the quartet have come to the region twice for talks with the two sides. According to a senior Israeli official and a senior European diplomat who was briefed on the matter, the head of the Palestinian negotiating team, Saeb Erekat, presented quartet representatives with two documents on November the 14th that contained the Palestinian proposals. The European diplomat said President Abbas submitted his proposal early as a demonstration of flexibility and to gather the support of the international community. Abbas also committed to suspending any unilateral steps at the United Nations to be taken by the Palestinians regarding their efforts to seek to be recognized as a Palestinian state until after January the 26th. The Palestinian document proposing the borders of a Palestinian state is based on the 1967 lines, but it also indicates a willingness to swap about 2% of the West Bank territory with that of Israel. The second document deals with the security arrangements and includes the Palestinians' consent to an international peacekeeping force on the Israeli border and in the Jordan Valley. It also commits the Palestinians to refrain from forging military alliances with countries hostile to Israel and also to a demilitarization of the West Bank. The proposal, however, would permit the Palestinians to have limited weaponry. A day after meeting with Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Erekat, the quartet delegation met with Netanyahu's representative Isaac Molho and told the Israeli that they wished to receive a counterproposal from Israel on both issues by the end of January. Molho replied that Israel would not cooperate with this approach, saying the quartet should instead get the Palestinians to return to direct talks with Netanyahu rather than conducting negotiations on Israel's behalf. Molho said talks should be direct and confidential. And now finally, Debka, which is an Israeli news intelligence gathering service, reports that Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak told the United States that Israel cannot wait until Iran declares that it has a nuclear bomb and believes that time is short in order to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Meanwhile, the United States, through U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, responded back by saying that a military strike against Iran should be a last resort and that the United States would like more time to be given for economic sanctions to have their desired effect. In addition, he chastised Israel, calling for them to return to the negotiating table and have peace talks with the Palestinians. Well, that's going to conclude our update for you this week. Until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.